How dare you argue with me? Hands behind your back or I'll throw you to the ground. You think you belong here? This gas station isn't for people like you. Listen, what happened that night at a small-town gas station will leave you speechless. This isn't just another arrest. This is a story of humiliation, arrogance, and the most shocking reversal of power you've ever heard. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button now. Drop a comment telling me what country you're watching from. And if you're not yet subscribed, do it right now, because you won't want to miss how this ends. Jonathan Miller had lived his life walking a tightrope between two worlds. Born in a small southern town to a schoolteacher mother and a factory worker father, he had grown up learning the value of discipline, education, and perseverance. Racism wasn't something hidden in shadows where he came from. It was painted across storefronts, shouted in school hallways, and whispered through clenched jaws every time his family walked down the street. But Jonathan had risen above it all. Through law school, through sleepless nights, studying while working two jobs, through years of being doubted, dismissed, and overlooked, he had built himself into a man of law. At 42, he was one of the youngest judges in the state. On the bench, his reputation was one of fairness, dignity, and relentless defense of truth. But outside the courtroom, when the robe came off, Jonathan was just another black man, at least, in the eyes of those who refused to see beyond his skin. That Friday evening was ordinary. Jonathan had visited his mother on the far side of town, carried groceries into her kitchen, and sat a while listening to her talk about the neighbors. On the way home, he noticed his fuel gauge dipping toward empty. He pulled into a small, dimly lit gas station, a place he had passed countless times but rarely stopped at. He stepped out of a sedan, swiping his card at the pump. The night air was thick and quiet. A few other cars dotted the lot, their drivers busy with their own tasks. Jonathan wore a crisp button-down shirt tucked into dark slacks, his shoes polished from the workday. To anyone else, he looked like a professional winding down his evening. To the wrong eyes, though, he was a black man in the wrong part of town. The flashing lights hit first, the red and blue sirens cutting through the night. Two squad cars barreled into the lot, tires screeching. Jonathan didn't flinch. He had seen this scene before, far too many times in his life. But tonight, he was simply buying gas. The doors flew open. Two officers approached, hands on holsters, eyes narrow with suspicion. "What are you doing here?" One barked, voice sharp and accusatory. Jonathan answered calmly, "I'm buying gas." The officers scoffed. "At this hour? You don't live around here, do you? License and registration now." Jonathan handed over his license without argument. The second officer circled his car, shining a flashlight inside as though hunting for something criminal. They whispered between themselves, throwing glances his way. Then came the accusation. "You matched the description of a suspect in a robbery earlier tonight." Jonathan's heart sank, but not from fear, from frustration. He had heard this line before. "You fit the description" that was thrown at countless black men across the country. He stayed silent, knowing anything he said could be twisted against him. But silence wasn't enough. One officer grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back. Jonathan didn't resist, but they shouted anyway, "Stop resisting!" Within seconds, the cuffs clicked around his wrists. He was shoved against the hood of his car, the cold metal pressing into his chest. Customers at the gas station began recording with their phones. A few shook their heads, others whispered, but none intervened. Jonathan felt the humiliation wash over him, not because he feared guilt, but because he knew the image of a black man in handcuffs was a familiar one to too many eyes. Still, he said nothing. He let the process unfold. They searched his car, rifled through his glove compartment, even dumped the contents of his briefcase onto the pavement. Papers scattered, among them legal documents with the seal of the court. The officers didn't notice or didn't care. They loaded him into the squad car. their smugness thick as smoke. At the station, he was booked, photographed, fingerprinted. "Charge him with resisting arrest," one officer said as if rehearsed. Jonathan sat silently in the holding cell, his mind steady. He could have revealed his identity, could have demanded a phone call to colleagues who would have secured his release in minutes. But he didn't. He let the night pass, knowing the morning would bring its own reckoning. The next day, the same officers were summoned to a disciplinary hearing. They had no idea why. They walked into the courthouse casually, expecting routine procedure. But when the doors opened and they stepped into the chamber, their confidence shattered. There, elevated above them in the seat of authority, wearing the black robe of justice, sat Jonathan Miller, the man they had cuffed, shoved, and mocked the night before. The room went silent. The officers froze, their jaws slack, their color draining. Jonathan's eyes met theirs, calm yet unyielding. "Court is in session," his voice boomed. The evidence was clear. Surveillance footage from the gas station, cell phone recordings from bystanders. Even their own body cameras betrayed their lies. Everything was laid bare for the court to see. The arrogance, the baseless arrest, the abuse of power. Jonathan recounted the events, not with vengeance, but with precision. "I was humiliated publicly, accused without cause, arrested without justification. This court cannot and will not turn a blind eye to the abuse of authority." The officers squirmed, their bravado gone. Their futures hung in the balance, suspended by the very gavel of the man they had once treated as less than human. The ruling was swift. Their actions were unlawful. Their badges were stripped. Criminal charges were filed. And their disgrace was broadcast across the evening news. For Jonathan, it wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. About showing the community that no one, not even those with guns and badges, stood above the law. The same dignity they tried to strip from him became the force that undid them. The gas station became a symbol, replayed across headlines. "Cops arrest black man at gas station next day. He's the judge presiding over their hearing." Communities cheered. Activists held the story high as a banner of hope, and officers across the state were reminded that authority without accountability is nothing but tyranny. Jonathan returned to his work, unchanged in his principles, but stronger in his resolve. To him, the arrest was just another reminder of why he wore the robe: to defend truth, to protect dignity, to hold accountable those who thought they could act without consequence. Viewers, let this story ignite you. Arrogance may roar in the night, but justice always speaks in the morning. Never judge a person by their skin color, their clothes, or their presence at a gas pump. You never know when the one you mock is the one who will decide your fate. Now I want to hear from you. What country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because stories like this don't just entertain, they expose, they inspire, and they remind us that truth always wins. Stay locked in. The next story will shake you even more.